Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello there. My name is Ahmed Sabir Murad. I'd like to talk about why we score low in IELTS writing. The thing, the thing is that when we prepare ourselves for the exam, we focus too much on our language. I don't say this is bad, this is actually necessary to work on your language. But the thing is that we also neglect something that is very important. That is, how does the examiner mark the paper? What impresses the examiner? What does the examiner care about? What does the examiner not care about? So let's start with the things that we care too much about, but actually they are either wrong or they don't mean much to the examiner. Number one, multiple ideas. Many candidates think that the more ideas they bring in their paragraphs, the higher band score they get. But this is obviously wrong because the number of ideas and the quality of the ideas is a sign of knowledge, not a sign of good language skills. You can show your language skills by showing how far and how deeply you can discuss one idea. So it's not important to bring many ideas in your paragraph. It is more important to bring one idea and discuss it in detail and give examples and reasons and all this stuff. I agree that sometimes you have to mention more than one idea in your paragraph, but this is only when the question requires you to do so. For example, advantages and disadvantages questions. In this type of question, you have to mention more than one idea. I suggest that you mention only two ideas in one paragraph. But it's not easy because you will have to discuss the two ideas. This is why I consider this type of question to be the most difficult one. Again, I want you to know that marks go to people who mention one idea in their paragraph and discuss it further enough. But no marks are given for the number of ideas or how good your ideas are. No one is interested. No one cares about how good your ideas are. They are not going to use your ideas, by the way. 2. The authenticity of your information and your examples. The thing is that many candidates think too much before they mention an example or before they say some piece of information. But this is not necessary because, again, no one is interested in your information being correct or not. Okay, no one is going to investigate this information. Don't waste time trying to find accurate information because they are not going to investigate. But your example must fit your point. I mean, make sure that the example that you use fits your idea perfectly. Make it as simple and direct as possible because examiners don't like to think much. They like clarity and lucidity. For example, you may say that Bill Gates was a soccer player before he started Microsoft, and no one will be alienated, no one will be upset. They care about how well you presented your idea, and they don't care much about your idea itself. 3. The element of surprise. Sometimes candidates think that the writing should be interesting and amusing to the examiner, but this is again wrong. Examiners are not interested in your interesting ideas or amusing stories. They care about the language that you use to present even a boring idea. There's no problem with that. Number 4, which is the most important, the word limit. Candidates are too worried about the word limit, but actually the word limit is not too much. It's only 250 words. 200 is not much at all. It's not impossible. It's actually very low. But the problem is that candidates still worry too much about it. So what is the problem if I worry about the word limit? The thing is that candidates tend to use language that is unnecessary, language that will do more harm than good just to reach that word limit. And usually they tend to use memorized language. And memorized language, what is memorized language? Memorized language is any sentence. I'm not talking about the simple expressions that we use all the time. I'm talking about, chunks and sentences, okay, in your essays. For example, some candidates use whole sentences just to fill up the essay, just to fill up the lines. So what is memorized language? Well, memorized language is any sentences or chunks of language that will just fit any topic. For example, this essay is going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of this topic to prove that the advantages or the merits outweigh the demerits. And then the candidates are happy that they could use merits and demerits for advantages and disadvantages. But actually the examiner is not happy with that, because this sentence just fits any topic. All your language must be specific to this topic. You should not use memorized language. You know why? Memorized language is penalized. You can check your answer sheet for that. There's a part for penalties. That is illegibility if your handwriting is so bad that the examiner can't read it. Memorized language if you use sentences that just fit any topic and are not specific to this topic. Off topic if you write something that has nothing to do with this topic. And the underlined thing if you write below 250 words. So if you just focus on writing a good essay, I promise that you will reach the 250 words. Actually, 250 words is not enough to cover one essay. Okay? And some candidates think that, hey, you want 250 words? I will give you 350 words. They think that the more words that they write, the more marks that they get. Well, this is obviously wrong, because people who write 350 words do not get any more marks than people who write 260 words do. On the contrary, they are responsible for the language that you use. If you write 350 words, get ready for the responsibility, because you are responsible for the vocabulary, for the collocations, for the grammar, for the sentence structures, punctuation, for everything. So don't make it your goal to write 350 words. Go around 290, 280, 300. It all depends. Just make sure that you finish your essay. 5. Long sentences. Sometimes candidates confuse long sentences with complex sentences. Complex sentences don't have to be long. You can write a complex sentence and still it can be short. So what is the problem with long sentences? Well, long sentences are not easy to track. Okay. It means they make the examiner's job more difficult than it already is. They upset the examiner. And, they are just not clear. So complex sentences are good, but long sentences are not. And by the way, if you read the band score descriptors, there are no marks for long sentences. Instead, you should start thinking about complex structures, because complex sentences only give you band score 6, but complex structures give you band score 7. You can check the band score descriptors for that. The public version is available everywhere. By complex structures, I mean things like passive, indirect questions, reported speech, participles, questions, and of course complex sentences too. Time. So what is the problem with time? The thing is that time is critical. Time is too short. Time is not enough. Well, this thing makes many candidates just manage their time in a wrong way. Too scared that they might not finish. They start too early. They start without enough planning. Well, this is obviously wrong. You should read the question carefully and thoroughly. You should read the question 3 times at least, even if you are the best user of the language ever, even if you are a native speaker of the language. Why? Because there is usually a trick. If you get caught in that trick, you will end up writing off topic. And this is not good. So how should I plan my essay? First, read the question completely and thoroughly 3 times at least. And second, before you go to the answer sheet, stay in the question paper and write a map or something, okay? Map up your ideas, okay? Write down what ideas and what examples you're going to use. Yes, this is going to use like 2, 3, or even 4 minutes of your valuable time in the exam. But if you don't do this, you will end up spending even more time during writing just trying to get yourself back to track. And you will spend even more time doing that. And this is not good. So spend some time planning before you hold the pencil, rather than spend a lot of time during writing trying to get back to track. So this was basically about the things that we worry too much about, and they're either wrong or they don't impress the examiner much. So what does the examiner care about? What impresses the examiner? Well, let's talk about this in terms of the parts of the essay: the introduction, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. Well, let's talk about the introduction. There are 5 pieces of advice for the introduction part. 1. Be careful with paraphrasing. Try to make it look different, but you have to deliver the same message of the question. And please try as much as you can not to use the words from the question. Try to use synonyms, other words with the same or very similar meaning. Of course, only if they fit. 2. Be concise. You don't want to spend too much time introducing the essay. You may use too much time and too many lines. You need the time and the lines for better essay. 3. Answer the question. Usually there is a question. Well, the answer for that question must be included in the introduction. Why? Because it makes the examiner's job easier. Because the examiner will know what to look for. Because the examiner will know what you mean and will expect what you want to say and will probably understand what you want to say without any confusion. So you must answer the question in the introduction. And please mention your opinion only if you are requested to. Because sometimes people just force their opinion into the introduction even if it is not requested. Well, if no one asks you for your opinion, well, keep it to yourself. Don't mention it. Not in the introduction, not in the body paragraphs, and not in the conclusion. If your opinion is not requested, just keep it to yourself. 4. Introduce your essay. You know what? They called it an introduction for a reason. The introduction should introduce your essay. In other words, it should contain something about your body paragraphs. It should refer to the main ideas of the body paragraphs. Why? Because again, it makes the examiner's job easier. Because the examiners will know what to look for in your body paragraphs. It's like you are telling them what directions you are going to take. And remember that clarity is paramount in IELTS Writing Task 2. Clarity is more important than anything. Because if your writing is not clear, well, I don't have to tell you. 5. Do not use memorized text. Because the introduction is the part where most of memorized texts come. For example, they say, this essay is going to discuss the merits and demerits of this topic and prove that the merits significantly outweigh the demerits. Well, this is memorized text. Why? Because this is an entire sentence. It's not just one expression. It's an entire sentence that might just fit any topic. This is definitely memorized text, and you will definitely be penalized for it. The bad thing about penalty is that they are not within the band score. The thing is that after calculating your mark, after calculating your band score, they penalize you for this. Okay? They take marks away from you. You don't want that. So this is about the introduction. What about the body paragraphs? There are 6 things that the examiners want to see in your body paragraphs. 1, a clear topic sentence. A topic sentence that is not a repetition from the introduction. Because many candidates just say, some people think that blah, blah, blah. Well, this sentence is a repetition from the introduction. You have already mentioned this thing in the introduction. You don't want to say it again. Instead, you should go right away into your idea. So don't say it again that some people think that while others think that, because you have already said that. 2, stay on track. Mention one idea and discuss it further. Mention one simple idea in the topic sentence. It could be a complex sentence, no problem with that, of course, okay? But just make it clear and make it direct, and please contain one idea in the topic sentence. And then explain this idea, and then give a reason, and then give an example. And this whole thing should result in a concluding sentence. 3, cohesive devices. People are not very wise when they deal with cohesive devices because They confuse cohesive devices with linkers. Well, cohesive devices are way more than linkers themselves. But people focus a lot on linkers. And as a matter of fact, examiners focus on linkers too, because linkers control the direction of your paragraph, and they are quite important. But you have to use them where they fit. For example, some people are so keen on using the word however. Well, there's no problem with that. You can use the word however like you want, but you have to use it where it fits. For example, the word however is used to introduce an opposite idea, an idea that is different from the first idea. But candidates tend to just force the word however into the context when it actually doesn't fit. So you have to spend some time studying each linker, knowing exactly where it fits and where it doesn't. Another example is when people use the word to elaborate, or the linker to elaborate. Well, they say to elaborate, but actually what comes after this to elaborate is not elaboration at all. Sometimes it's even an example, and sometimes it is completely a different idea. 4. Advanced vocabulary. I'm not trying to undermine advanced vocabulary at all. It's wonderful. But you have to use it where it fits. I remember I was evaluating an essay, and then the candidate wrote the word exorbitant. But he mentioned it to describe a large amount of money. But this is obviously wrong, because the word exorbitant is used to describe where you're going to spend the money, not the money that you're going to spend. So there's a lot of difference here. So he would have been much wiser if he had used just the word large amount of money, safe and sound, without using an advanced piece of vocabulary that doesn't fit the meaning. 5. Examples. Your examples should be clear and simple, and they should exactly fit what you have said in your idea. And again, they don't have to be real, they don't have to be authentic, you can just make them up. F. A concluding sentence. You know, it is a human trait that people lose track when they read something. So they need something to remind them of what they have read, to remind them that you did not stray away from the idea of your paragraph. So that's the job of a concluding sentence. So you mention a topic sentence, you explain it, you give reasons, you give examples, you prove it in a way that presents a concluding sentence that reminds the examiner or the reader of what he or she has read in your entire paragraph. Concluding sentences are important because they tell the examiner that you are proving this idea, not any other. So what about the conclusion? Well, here's one idea. Conclusions should not contain new ideas. Your ideas should be entirely discussed in the body paragraphs, and the conclusion is for concluding. You know, the best conclusion is one that reminds the examiner or the reader of the most salient points that you have discussed in your essay. And again, if your opinion was not requested by the question, keep it to yourself. Do not mention it even in the conclusion. But if it is requested, you have to mention it again in the conclusion. So your conclusion should be something like a very succinct summary of your entire essay. It should remind the examiner of what he or she has seen in your essay. It should refer to the most salient points, but of course without using the same language that you used in your essay. Now, we have discussed things that are either wrong or don't mean much to the examiner, and things that we should focus on so that we impress the examiner. But what should we do now? Well, the bad news about writing is that you don't know how good your writing is until you see your band score. So it is always wise to reach someone who knows IELTS writing, to look at your writing and tell you exactly what you need to improve, where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, what you should do, what you should not do, and look specifically at your writing, not everyone's. Well, this service is available at my Telegram group. The link is in the description. I provide marketing services for IELTS writing. There are a lot of examples for you to check, and some of the services free. If you like this video, please hit the subscription button, the like button, the bell button, any button that you find down there. Thanks for watching.